Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the Fleer Team Action cards and stickers of the 1970s and 1980s. This is an overlooked portion of the sports card journey because these are not player cards, but that doesn't mean that they're not official cards, and there doesn't mean that they are cards that should be overlooked. It's kind of an unfortunate quirk to the sports card community, because when you think of Fleer, people normally think of Fleer as a baseball card company for one simple reason. In the 1980s, there was Topps, Donruss, and Fleer. Those were the three companies. And obviously, Fleer started making basketball cards earlier than, they started the modern era of basketball cards. So they're thought of in that way too. But the reality is that they were actually very much a football card company more than a baseball card company by even in the 1980s. The story about Fleer with football is okay. So first off, in the 1960s, Fleer had made some cards, some baseball cards and some football cards, and even a basketball card set. And baseball card collectors knew about that, but there was only one baseball card set of modern players, and even that wasn't really a set, it was a portion of a set. Football, however, they made 4 years, from 1960 to 1963. And then in 1963, Fleer got the message that competing with Topps was just a no, it was basically a fruitless effort, and so they walked away. And through the rest of the 1960s, they really didn't do much. I mean, they did collectibles for kids, but it was all sorts of stuff. Rarely was it around sports. But by the end of the decade, they were starting to get back into sports by making contracts with MLB and with the NBA and eventually with the NFL. And so right at the end of the 60s, they started to create patches for baseball. And by 1972, they were doing that for football as well. The patches are a normal size card with two patches on the front that seem more like stickers because they're attached to the cardstock. Nothing on the back. And there are two patches. There's one down below, which is a square with like a logo or a team helmet. And then up at the top, they have text for a team. But these they're canvas, and they're intended to be applied to clothes, so they are patches. And these did come in a couple of different releases. So in 1972, and then again in 1973, they had their initial release. And the initial release has a single bar on the face mask of the helmet. Now, you can't tell the difference of what I'm about to talk about with the logos. So it's only with the helmets where you're able to see the difference between the 72 and 73 release, which is a single bar, and the 1974 release, which has a double bar for the face mask. So those two releases are distinct for half the cards, or half of the patches. In 1975, they did an upgrade where now all of the cards were affected because they added the trademark logos or copyright logos for the text, for the logos, and for the helmets. So that means that all of the representations for the teams now have a copyright logo on them. So those are a lot easier to tell. And then in 1976, 76 they shifted over to high gloss stickers. They're still basically the same. But you can tell that they were using the same design across all of these different releases, which is almost universal. But there are a few cases where there's a variation that may happen here or there. But by and large, there are pretty much 4 versions of each one of these. And every single team has 4 different patches. They have one with a helmet, one with a logo, one with one form of text at the top, one with another form of text at the top. And as you can see, it's a haphazard array of the text at the top and whatever is down below. But those are all consistent, so the combination of one carries through with all 4 different versions of these patches. Now, I'm going to break this into 3 sections because I just talked about the patches. I'm going to talk about the stickers at the end. That allows me to move very quickly with it, and it allows me to make it more focused so you can pay attention to which one is which. But in the middle, it's time to talk about cards, because Fleer leaned into cards with football in a way that they didn't even with baseball, where they had the contract with Laughlin. In football, they had a little bit of a journey, and then they were actually able to get into cards. But it starts in 1972 with one of those patches where you could get a pack with just a patch, or you could get one with a patch and a card. And the card for 1972 was a quiz card. These cards they're all blank backed. They're a little bit bigger than a normal card. So they're more along the lines of the early 50s cards from Bowman and from Topps. They have questions at the top, and then they have answers down below at the bottom. In 1973, they adjusted that to a similarly crafted card where each one of these cards is still blank backed, but on the front, this is an AFC NFC scouting report. It's kind of like the theme is, if you go to the Pro Bowl and you don't understand football yet, this will help you to understand how the different positions work. And that's what this is. It's a look at every single position on the team. Now, they don't separate out left tackle and right tackle. They don't bother with that. They look at individual positions as a collective. And so that means that you have guard, tackle, and you have center as 3 different cards. And they have offense, they have defense, and they have special teams. Every single one of these has a really nice drawing up at the top, and then a description down below of the position that applies. So that was 73. In 74, they shifted over to actual cards that are still the same size, but now it's a very thin card stock. I mean, really thin, like almost moving over to the space of 88 score. Each one of these cards the card set is built around the Hall of Fame. And the Hall of Fame was still very recent at the time, very new. So they didn't have a lot of Hall of Famers in the Hall, so it was easy to put together a card set of all the different Hall of Famers. These cards have a white border and then a brown inner border that's designed to be kind of like a plaque for each of the athletes. And then on the back, it actually does have a card back here, so it has a write-up about the player. And the 1974 cards don't have numbers on the back, even though there supposedly is an order to them. Not sure why that's the case, but it could be because in 1975, they made the same set, but they extended it out and added a whole lot of cards at the end. So the 1975 cards do have numbers on the back. They're easy to distinguish because they have a brown border as opposed to a white border. And other than that, the front portion of the set is basically the same. So I guess that's how you get the order of the 1974 cards. Regardless, that was 75. But by 1976, Fleer decided they were going to try something because Topps refused to pay the NFL license. They didn't need to have NFL license on their cards. They can airbrush off the helmets. And so that meant that's the reason why the 1970s cards in Topps have weird color combinations, because if they use the actual NFL color pairings per team, they would run the risk of upsetting the NFL and possibly getting sued. So they used different colors to just get away from that and not have to worry about having to pay the NFL a license that, because they were a monopoly, they didn't have to bother with it. Instead, they just paid the NFLPA. Well, Fleer already had a contract with the NFL, as with MLB and the NBA, because that was what that's how they were making the stickers. So why not expand that out and make team cards for football? And that's what they did. So in 1976, they made these team cards where they're not cards specifically, they're actually stickers. So you can peel the front of this off and stick it on something, and then the back just becomes a blank fronted back. So I don't know if they did that in order to try to test the waters and keep Topps from suing them, or what the case was. But it is unusual that these are normal size cards. They're not oversized like we just seen. They're normal size cards, but they are technically stickers. But Fleer really wanted to show off that they were NFL licensed, and so they have a helmet right there on the card, and they even have an NFL shield as a design feature around the helmet. Even when you go over to the Super Bowl cards, same thing. The Super Bowl cards have 2 helmets, one for each team, the shield around it as the design element. So the whole card set was really leaning into the idea of these are football cards as opposed to player cards. Now we had actually 2 different worlds of these types of cards. And then in 1977, I guess they didn't need to worry about whether it was a card or a sticker or whatever, because starting in 1977, they went with actual cards. And these cards are designed pretty much the same way, except instead of having the shields around the helmets, whether it's a single helmet or two helmets, now they just have kind of rounded corners, which is very much a 1970s kind of a look. And because these were team cards, they couldn't be about players, although players were very prominently on here. I mean, you can see the jersey numbers, you can see the name. As long as they didn't specify players' names on these cards, they could get away with what they were doing. But here's Walter Payton in 1977. And, well, here he is again. So you have a card that is a team action card, and you also have one that's a Topps player card. So in many cases, there are two cards of a player in the same year. You just don't think about the Fleer cards as being cards of the players, but boy, there are a lot of really prominent cards of really significant players that are kind of hidden in here. But this is a great opportunity for me to explain to you how the set works, because every single team, all 28 teams, because the Seattle Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were now part of the league. So all 28 teams have two cards for each team. They have an offensive card and they have a defensive card. And then when you get to the end of all the teams, then they have all the Super Bowls, starting at Super Bowl I and going to whatever Super Bowl number they happen to be at. And that meant that every single year the card set got one card longer. So in 1978, they used the exact same model, except even though the design is the same, you'll notice the border is now a super bright yellow border. Is it too much? Yes. Is it as bad as the 1991 Fleer? This one's probably worse, in fact. It's a lot of a card. But it is the same design where every single team has two cards, has offense and defense, and it has all the Super Bowls, and it's extended out one more Super Bowl, as you would expect. And then in 1979, they went back to a white border, but now they they shrank down the image a little bit so they could run a single color band as an inner border on the card. But that band is not team color. I don't know why they didn't bother to do that, because they obviously could. They still have the logo or the helmet on the card, but they went with a band of color on each one of these cards, also with the Super Bowl as well. And that was the design for the set. 1980, though, things were starting to change, because now they changed to having a red, white, and blue ribbon for that inner border feature on each one of the cards. And I believe this is because at the time they were busy trying to sue Topps to try to break the monopoly and get into baseball. And so here they're able to show off that they are the NFL brand over in football. Really don't know exactly what it is, but leaning as heavily into that shield as they do is quite a note. But for the Super Bowl cards, they replaced the NFL shield with the other helmet. So they still kept the whole theme, which was built around a helmet at one side. Now they used the counterpoint from the shield to allow the card to have balance. So 1980 came to a close, and now Fleer had the opportunity to make baseball cards. And once they did that, they used a design in baseball that they basically kind of ported straight over to the football cards as well. Obviously, when you have a horizontal card, it looks a bit different. But the big thing with the football cards, they still have the helmet on the card, but they have it centered now in the theme at the bottom, making these cards much more distinct as being separate from the baseball cards, even if I doubt that very many people even realized that they were the same designs for 1981. But they did make one change to this set, which is that they added onto the end a bunch of NFL highlights cards. And this gives the opportunity to see not so much behind the scenes stuff as much as what you would see if you were up close to the game. So there's a whole series of cards that looked at the NFL in a way that Topps most definitely never did. But 1982 was a shift, because now Topps went ahead and said, all right, fine, screw it, we're going to go ahead and pay the NFL license. So once they did that, they were able to put logos on the helmets and put a logo helmet right on the card. So now that meant that Fleer had competition. And you'll notice that the design has now changed to a much thinner design than they'd been using in previous years. And they've got a very prominent logo, right, or very prominent helmet that's a little bit bigger than it had been in the past. And again, they have the Super Bowl cards, but they also added something alongside the NFL highlights cards, or I should say, one of the NFL highlights cards in 1982 was dedicated to the Pro Bowl. So this is the first time that we had a Pro Bowl card in the set. Now, 1983, we got a further refinement of the design where now it's getting really thin and really delicate, which is a great feature to allow for the images to really pop right out. Because when the border is fine and thin, it gets the viewer in the mood for better detail, which allows for the detailing in the image to pop right out, which allows Jim McMahon to really come right out on this card. And it makes the whole presence of the card a lot stronger and a lot more, it reads in a way that allows it to stand out more in competition to Topps. But you also notice that when it comes to the team highlight or the NFL highlights cards, now they have a whole special logo that looks really cool and has its own quality to where it looks like it's supposed to be something really special. So Fleer was doing a really good job of adjusting over to competition with Topps and earning their place by having good card designs. And then we've got 1984. And 84, this is such an incredibly bold card. I mean, this is a card where if they had card stores at the time, they may have had a couple of card shops, but for the most part, card shops were still pretty rare, and they weren't places to buy modern cards. This 84 Fleer card is absolutely designed for a display case. It's going to jump right out. Super bold green border, that strong yellow band down at the bottom. I mean, this card is so impressive. And again, when you go to the end of the set, you've got the NFL highlights cards. Well, you got the same logo as before, only it's slightly more impressive here. And so that means that this card set is designed to catch your eye and get people talking. And so that if you don't know about these cards, it's a lot easier for you to run into them. So Fleer was now really engaged in trying to earn their keep. Now, 1985 was a significant change for these cards because the design, well, first off, the design looks like it's more of a 1970s card as opposed to a 1980s card. But you'll notice that they went away from having a team logo or a team helmet or an NFL shield, none of that. This card set is really stripped down. But there's something significant on this card where instead of having any of those, you'll notice that the emblem down at the corner looks kind of like a theme for a subset. Instead of doing just 2 cards for each team, now they actually did 3 cards for every single team. They did offense, they did defense, and they did, amazingly, inaction. I don't get that because all the cards are in action. But at any rate, they did an inaction card, so that means that now the card set has bumped out by another 28 cards. And in order to accommodate that, they got rid of all the Super Bowl cards, except for the most recent Super Bowl, 19 in this case. They have 3 cards dedicated to Super Bowl 19, and then they have 1 card dedicated to the Pro Bowl. So that's all they have tacked on to the end of the set. In 1986, they used the same model, but they used the same model with a wildly different design, where this is the most intricate design, the most heavily designed card, because it has a whole pattern in the border. They have a tilted frame for the image. It is unquestionably the most distinct of all of these cards. Maybe not the most impressive or the most standout, but definitely the most distinct. Still 3 cards for every single team. And then at the end, they still have 3 cards for the Super Bowl and 1 card for the Pro Bowl. And I think we can all agree that if you're going to do a card set where you're just focusing on 3 cards of 1 Super Bowl, this is the Super Bowl you want to be doing that with. In 1987, we got back to normal in a way where this, first off, let me just say, this is my personal favorite of all the designs. I love the bold black with the yellow, and I imagine Steelers fans like these cards more, but there's just a certain quality to these cards that I just think looks great, really clean, absolutely love it. But it got back to normal by having, once again, 2 cards for every single team. So the set was shrunk quite a bit, and this allowed them to bring back all of the Super Bowls from Super Bowl 1 all the way through, at this point, Super Bowl 21. But they also included playoff cards at the end of the set. So they weren't bringing back highlights, but they were bringing back playoffs cards. So that is what filled out the end of the set and gave more cards for the season and for teams that were in the playoffs. So it gave a little bit more richness to the card set. And then 1988 comes along, and 88 looks like the 85 design where it grew up and became an 80s card. They did bring back the helmet, although they got rid of the NFL logo. But they brought back the helmet, so all of these cards, once again, have a very prominent team look to them. Once again, they still have 2 cards per team, so it was only 85 and 86 where they had 3 cards per team. But when they get to the end of the set, they got rid of most of the Super Bowls, and they just had the Super Bowls from the 1980s. And then, of course, the most recent Super Bowl, 22, and then some playoff cards. But interestingly, this card set ended with not team highlights, or not NFL highlights cards, but instead league leaders. And remember, these are cards that are not, they're not cards of players. These are cards of teams. And so instead of doing players who were league leaders, they did the teams that were leaders in certain categories. And that's the way that they closed out the set. And that's the way that they closed out Fleer, because in 1989, they didn't make cards. The NFL was now getting the opportunity to expand out, and they told Fleer to shut up or put up. And because, look, 1988, all they had was Topps. Well, 1989, now you got Pro Set coming in, you got Score coming in, you got Action Pack coming in. It was getting crowded, and we wouldn't see cards by Fleer until 1990, which I'm going to talk about separately. But I did say that I wanted to save the stickers for last, and that's what I'm going to go back and talk about. So, as you may recall, I ended the patches by talking about the 1976 stickers that were the same design as the patches. They were just high gloss stickers. Well, that was the 1976 year where they had the cards that were stickers. In 1977, they shrank the image or the sticker down to where it was just the logo or the helmet down at the bottom. It was that as a square, about the width of a card. So it is basically the same thing as the patch without the banner at the top. That's kind of a way to think about it. And every single team had one of each, with some exceptions where there might be 2 backgrounds behind, like the helmet. So there were a few cases of that, but by and large, it was 2 stickers for every single team in every single release. The big thing that you got to know, though, is that they repeated this every year, so you got to understand the back. And in 1977, the back of these stickers was a picture of a Jets card where they were peeling the sticker off. Basically, the back is instructions for what to do on the front to figure out how to remove the sticker, or more correctly, a way of showing people that it's a sticker. In 1978, it's very different because the back of the sticker is actually a puzzle piece. Every single one of these stickers has a puzzle piece, and there are different puzzle pieces that align with each one of these teams. So there's actually an array of collectible stickers. But the image that this is a part of is a 40-piece puzzle of the Super Bowl from 1978, where this is an indoor shot, has a very particular look, and it's a really, really impressive shot. In 1979, again, they were using the same stickers, so the only way you can tell is on the back, and the sticker, or the card back, or the back behind the sticker, is a 40-piece picture of the stadium where the Super Bowl was held. So it's an outdoor shot, it's a whole different scale, so it's easy to tell the difference between the 2 stickers. And then in 1980, they did the same thing, only they did not do a puzzle on the back. They have a blank back. So it's odd. You would think that the blank back was the first set instead of the last set. But the last set is because after 1980, they would move on from these little stickers and they would go with more impressive, more professional looking stickers. And the 81 set really kicks it off well with an example where they have a very complex border with a lot of green, some yellow, almost like a football field picture behind the helmet or behind the team logo. But these cards are a little bit more oblong. They're a little bit narrower, a little bit taller, and then on the back they have a schedule. But this is the only time that they did one of these helmets that it looks like this and is with these dimensions. In 1982, they shifted over to the style that we would see all the way through 1988. Slightly narrower. These have a bold color behind either the helmet or the logo. On the back they have a schedule, but gold is the color on the back of the 1982 version. But it's actually the same colors they have in the 1983 as well. So the 83 is like the 82, except they have the schedule for 1983 as opposed to the schedule of 1982. So these are ones you got to pay attention to on the back. In 1984, they went with a bright yellow border. This is very distinct, very strong, and again they have the schedule on the back. And then 1985. Now 1985 is when it starts to get a little bit tricky. You got to pay attention. Well, okay, 82 and 83 was tricky, but in 1985 they have a blue background behind the helmet. But on the back of these, they have a contest for winning a team jacket. And that's important. I'm going to be getting back to that pretty soon, really soon. But first, we got to go over to 86, where they now went with a green border. And you'll notice that the back of this is advertising, whether it's Double Bubble or Razzles, it's advertising their candies and gum. And so that's what we're going to see not moving forward, but that's what we see here with the 1986. But then when we go to 87, it's the exact same thing, except now we're back to the blue border. So the blue background for the cards is either 85 or 87. 85, it has a contest for a jacket, whereas the 87 card has a blue front, but it has an advertisement for candy, either gum or for Razzles, on the back. So if you are trying to collect one of each one, you got to pay attention to those backs where only the 1985 has the contest on it. And then in 1988, they continued with the theme they'd been running with, where they have a bright, bright, bright red front. And then on the back, they have, actually, this is a schedule, isn't it? So for the last set, they did a schedule. And that would be it. That would close it all out. They would not bother to do any more card sets because they had to make a shift. And when they would come out the other end in 1990, they would be away from stickers in football specifically. So this is the end of the run for Fleer stickers for football. So I want to do a quick recap of all the 1980s stickers, or 81 through, because the 1977 through 80 stickers are all the same. And then starting in 1981, you have the complex green back. In 1982 and 83, you have the gold border. 84, you have the yellow border. 85, you have the first blue border. Then you have green in 86. 87, you have the other blue border. And 88, you have the red border. That is, if you're trying to be a completist for teams or sets or etc., that's the order of all the stickers, so that now you know. So for the future, as they would rebuild rebuild the whole concept of football cards for Fleer in 1990, they would do something very traditional across the board. Everything you see here, this truly is the end, but these team action cards and the stickers that go with them are such a fascinating part of the sports card industry, because in the entire history of sports cards, this was not happening anywhere else. You can see a little shades of it here and there, but this is such an underappreciated part of the sports card landscape, mainly because people don't know how to see it. So hopefully I've given you a map so that you can actually sit down and actually see what was going on with all these cards. If there are any questions, please by all means let me know in the comments below. And that brings it all to a close. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And I really hope that you enjoyed watching this, and thank you very much for watching it.